Piro, uh, I I liked your short little your video there. It was a good ending too. And I think I share your sentiments. I mean, I've seen a few of your videos, and I think you're calling for something like more like a more pragmatic approach, or something something more concrete, or at least oriented toward the concrete, toward what's really going on, instead of just you know making laps, doing circles with concepts and systems of concepts uh, that refer to other concepts. That's what I mean. That don't, you know, uh, refer to or or describe how we actually know what we know, instead of ascribing or uh, reaching after some kind of perfect knowledge, as you said. But I think where I would disagree, and I think that maybe this was unintentional, or maybe this really is your mindset, um, is that you're still looking for knowledge. I mean, you want to start somewhere, uh, and you see the knowledge. I mean, there is a lot of things that we know as far as the imminent meaning of that word "know" applies. Not some kind of transcendental knowing concretely, universally, perfectly, forever in a realm of the forms. Uh, but I mean, as far as what we know, as far as we have that knowledge, it's been that rubric has been I guess assimilated, has been attained, has been apprehended and recorded, all under the auspices of this project for attaining perfect knowledge. You see, so the knowledge we have is already infected, if I can use that term. Uh, it has already been has been guided and influenced by this uh, foundational by this foundation, which is the search for perfect knowledge. And I don't mean foundation as in static, like a house foundation. I mean foundation like the MacArthur T Foundation. Have you ever heard of, you ever listened to WN or NYC? Like a foundation that is the the continual source of economy that we can continue to come back to, which the foundation for the betterment of society. And they plan projects by using a certain by allocating their resources, but it's based on a certain fundamental direction that was already given, I think, by the Greeks. Anyway, I want to turn you on to well your video and some of your other videos, although I haven't watched a whole lot of them. Reminded me of uh, of the writings of Merleau-Ponty, his early writings in a book called The Structure of Behavior. And let's see, I'm looking through here, and I'm going to read probably the rest of this video. Uh, his, I guess I want to say his plan, his take on science, on psychology, on philosophy, on what should be going on, what should be the aim, and how might we go about doing that. And I think that it provides a certain, at least a possible source of inspiration, or an ally for you in what you say that you would like to do in some of your videos. Um, so he says, one could say that psychology and philosophy tend toward a notion of here and now consciousness, which they need in order to account for that which is specific in perception, for the individual existences which it reveals within and outside of us, for basically the world. That's what he's saying. But philosophy does not possess an idea of consciousness and an idea of action, which would make an internal communication between them possible, between psychology and philosophy. Whether consciousness be continuous duration or a center of judgments, in either case, this pure activity is without structure, without nature. Correlatively, perception and action taken in that which is specific to them, that is, as the knowledge and the modification of a reality are rejected from consciousness. It is granted that their proper function is to root consciousness in being, but at the same time, the determination of its content is denied to the judgment of existence. Some of that is referring to previous pages, but it follows that the relation between what exists and the fact of existence, between the consciousness of contents and the consciousness of action, which roots them in being, remains necessarily external, the relation between the two. And then he says, in the final analysis, consciousness is defined, or has been defined. This is written in 1943, excuse me. Yeah, that's right. In the final analysis, consciousness is defined by the possession of an object of thought, or by transparence to itself. Action is defined by a series of events external to each other. They are juxtaposed. They are not tied together. Bergson himself pointed out what is abstract in psychologies which describe the empirical origin of perception, as if its functions were immediately contemplative, as if the original and primary attitude of man were that of a spectator. But he did not follow this idea all the way. To do it justice completely, it would have been necessary, first of all, to stop defining consciousness by knowledge of self, and to introduce the notion of a life of consciousness which goes beyond its explicit knowledge of itself, but which is what Bergson was doing. But something further would also have been necessary. To describe the structures of action and knowledge in which consciousness is engaged, instead of leaving this life of consciousness indeterminate and being content with the concrete in general, as if consciousness could not go beyond the melodies of instinct without being liberated from all determinate form. Again, you have to read the book. It's a great book. Consequently, it can be seen that the psychology of perception in Bergson is not profoundly modified by the fact that he brought it closer to action. So he's saying that bringing action into play, talking about action is not enough here. It's a necessary step, not enough. Since action is still understood in the narrower sense of a vital action, and since vital action tends to adapt us to the unorganized mass, the problem is still to understand how the objects of nature are constituted for us. And the question of whether or not it is indeed to objects of this kind that human action and perception are first addressed is not asked. So he's saying that since my mouth is really dry, since it is the way that philosophy, since Bergson, and this is in France, so Bergson was a big influence in France. Since it's still understood in this narrower sense of vital action, which he means like purely biological action and not human, the problem is the problem is still to understand how objects of nature are constituted for us. And what he's saying is that no one even tends to ask whether or not it is indeed to objects of this kind that human action and perception are first addressed. So, our presuppositions keep us not from finding out what we want to know. I mean, they have not kept us from finding out what we want to know next. What he's saying is that instead of a mindset which goes into saying, oh, what do I want to know next now that my knowledge has failed? He's saying, let's go back and see what was not yet asked. Instead of what do I want to know next, what has not yet been asked? And that's the important part, because that's what's guiding our questions. He goes through, and this is fantastic. I'll probably make another video which reads more of this, and I'll try to put stress and intonation on the important parts. And what he says is that perception, a few pages later, he says, 20 seconds left. All right, so he says, he's talking about infants and how they first, what are the first primitive elements of their perception? He says, the primitive objects of perception, the mode of existence of primitive, are lived as realities rather than known as true objects.